make your websites better and don't accept that them being broken and janky is okay. I'm Jono Alderson, and this is SEO in 2026. Here we are.
I every year I love your pronunciation of the word "this," but I think 2026 even beat that. 2026.
It's very exciting.
Jono, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
God, I've forgotten already. My number one tip this year is to stop accepting technical mediocrity.
What does mediocrity look like in the world of technical SEO?
Oh, we all know it and see it all the time. We have accepted that it's normal for websites to be rubbish. Whether they're the ones we work on or our clients or the ones we browse, things are slow. We hit forward 4 errors. There's a bunch of JavaScript loading, which means when you click the thing, it doesn't respond quickly. Stuff doesn't quite show on screen properly. The font's too small. The things are ugly. It takes 4 minutes for something to add to the cart, and then the cart was empty all along. And somehow we're all kind of okay with this because it's so normal for all of these interactions to be so bad that we just kind of get on with it. And for the large part, Google, to put the SEO hat back on for a minute, for the large part, Google has kind of coped with that, and they've kind of made the most of the web being janky and broken and poorly built. But as we enter this this age of AI, which I'm sure everybody is talking about, the rules do change slightly because these systems aren't as good at unpicking that mess. And they aren't as incentivized to as Google has been. It's when you look at their commercial and political and product roadmaps and you look at the way they interact with websites and stuff, it's a very different machine. And they are much less tolerant of faults and errors and omissions and gaps. And they won't put the same resources in that Google has to wade through that.
Janky, of extremely poor or unreliable quality, informal North American, apparently.
Oh, wow. Excellent. I've gone over the pond now. I love janky as a word. It's so visceral. It's such a great, as I say, we all feel this and see this all the time, and we just kind of accept it. So it's nice to take a step back and say, actually, this isn't good enough. It's not how it should be.
You say that most SEO strategies ignore the platform itself. What are the key aspects of the platform that need to be looked at?
Yeah, so we call ourselves digital marketers or a subset of digital marketing, and we kind of forget that first word means something, that Canvas isn't billboards on newspapers or shop fronts. It is the web. And that in order to do the web well, you need to consider its limitations, the mechanics, the ways it works, and to take advantage of those and to mitigate the disadvantages. And I think good SEO requires that you really consider, how is this web page transmitted to the user? What is it comprised of? Is it well built and managed? Is it brittle? Are the things in the right order? Does it use the right ingredients? Is it using legacy code that might be slow or cumbersome or not work very well? Does it crash on older mobile phones visiting from countries that maybe don't have good network connectivity? And 100 of these are the considerations that I think we all have a tendency to overlook because it's perceived as kind of developer-y engineered gubbins. But I think it's almost as critical as, is our content relevant? And do we have lots of links and a great reputation?
You say that many developers consistently choose stacks that bloat and break. Are you able to name any?
Oh, absolutely. So I think this started in around 2011 with the birth of Angular, which was the first kind of real modern JavaScript stack. And suddenly, overnight, we went from a web which was very, very web-centric, people with servers and frameworks and infrastructure, to a culture of app developers and software developers entering the scene, who then conflated the word website and app. And they started to be used interchangeably when they're actually very different things. And from there, we got the birth of React, we got Vue, we got Vercel, we got 100 variations of those. And now, today, if you were launching a fancy startup, your platform of choice would probably be something based on React, hosted on some kind of client-side infrastructure, etc. The problem with all of that is that the world of SEO and Google and increasingly agents and LLMs aren't designed to consume and digest apps. They're designed to browse the open web. And websites and applications are different things that should work in different ways. But we've normalized a culture where we use app toolkits to build websites, which is why we end up with slow, client-side rendered, JavaScript-powered sites would ship 20 megabytes of JavaScript before they put an image on the page and load difficultly. And it requires a team of 28 people to take 4 weeks to change a header tag on a page. And it's all very dev-centric. And part of the reason this persists is because the developers and engineers who build using these tools prefer those tools. And they preferenced their preferences over the preferences of the end users and the marketers and the businesses. And we've normalized this. And this is why the web in large is mediocre, because we are using the wrong tools for the wrong job.
How can a single SEO in a business battle against mediocre developers shipping fragile code, unnecessary complexity, as you put it?
So one of the nice things that's happened, I think, is, and taking a step back, one of the reasons this all started was because browsers were terrible to work with. Chrome was very different to Firefox, was very different to Internet Explorer, etc. And the JavaScript ecology allowed you to pave over a lot of that. Now that's not the case. Browsers are great. Chrome and the Chromium stuff and all the consortium and the work they're doing together with the other browsers makes support for features consistent. It makes standards universal. So now browsers can do a lot of what JavaScript has been used to do, like transition between pages, like preload stuff before it's needed. So actually we're in a position where most websites could go back to basics and they could just be clean, semantic, simple HTML. They could just use CSS animations instead of JavaScript. They could just send pages instead of fragments of applications. So I think as an individual person, you can take a step back and say, why do we need all of this complexity when something simple would do the same job in the same way with far less overhead? And if you want to play the long game, at what point should we start saying we should rip down all of this architecture that we've spent a decade building in the wrong direction and doing something that's inherently natively much sleeker? So if you're in an organization where you're already fighting against all of this stuff, I think being that voice that says, at what point do we start to change direction is quite important. And you can start with small bits, like replace bits of JavaScript with bits of CSS, replace soups of divs within spans in HTML markup with more semantic stuff. And like actually using H1 on a page, actually using a side to say this is a sidebar. Machines are reading this. Google's reading it. LLMs are reading it. That may be using it, who knows. But it does make the web an easier ecosystem to exist in and pass. So I think it's worth the effort.
But is it really an SEO's job to actually have these conversations with developers? Because it seems like tough conversations to have, and it seems like they're wading through treacle, trying to understand code when perhaps they should actually be focusing on how to rank in Google as opposed to actually how to build a website properly.
Yeah, I think you need to do both. As I was saying, I think understanding and advocating for what a good website looks like technically is as important as saying, is our content good? Do we have the right links? Are we aligning with the right product market fit, etc. I think if you ignore the website bits, what you're doing in digital marketing or SEO, it's just marketing, right? You're putting nice words and pictures on a pamphlet. But if that pamphlet is inaccessible to Google or takes 6 seconds to load, you are not going to be well equipped for the future. I think in particular, if we zoom out and look at what does the web look like in, 2, 3, 5 years from now, we assume that there'll be a rise in agentic searching, where I search for something and there's a query fan out process and 100 searches happen and those searches trigger other things that trigger other things. If every one of those interactions, or if even just one of those interactions takes 4 seconds and returns a bunch of malformed JSON or hits a server error because somebody didn't configure a firewall correctly, then the whole thing comes tumbling down. And where your site might have been recommended or your content might have been extracted and cited, you're suddenly not visible at all. So I think the technical integrity of your site as a process of future-proofing, I think is more critical than it has ever been. Google has let us be lazy. Google's ability and Chrome's ability to ignore errors and poor performance has let us ignore this and get away with it being bad for a decade now. And that's no longer the case.
If you see a web page loading in 6 seconds and you're pretty sure that you could improve the speed to 2 seconds, how do you actually articulate that to stakeholders within the business? Do you actually talk about the financial value potentially of improved conversion rates, improved user retention, and ultimately improved purchases as a result of that improved page speed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've had 15 years of really good research on this. I think WPOstats.com is a really great research that has filterable case studies on every combination of We shaved 1.4 seconds off LCP. We reduced our server response time by 20%. Variations on those narratives, all of which you can wave under your C-suite's nose and say, look, milliseconds do convert to money. And there's some other arms you can pull as well. You can play the eco card, because if your site is taking 4 seconds to load, that's because some power plant somewhere and banks of CPUs and GPUs and undersea cables are overheating to deliver that because it's been built wrong, badly. So reducing the carbon overhead of those kinds of problems is super valuable.
Yes, the study that I always quote or I always hear is from back in 2006, Amazon found that every 100 milliseconds it added page load time, it cost them 1% in sales. And that was a massive leaked study, but I haven't heard kind of a better example of page speed effect since then.
I think Nielsen did a really good one in 2021-ish. I can't remember what it was called, but they studied a few hundred sites of different niches, and they found the same kind of stats, which was really nice. The other angle here, which I think is potentially more useful for SEO, is that nobody sets out to build a slow site. It's not a design decision. So it's an accidental thing that happens. And what happens when you start to unpick and fix site speed is you actually open up and you find all the skeletons in the closets. What you discover is that actually your CTO has outmoded opinions on how fonts should load, or your development team don't know about modern CSS standards, or you have a connection to a third-party partner that haven't been updated in 10 years. And the process of going through and saying, how do we make this faster, fixes the organization in 100 ways that would never have happened otherwise. And you start to optimize for quality of user experience rather than just how do we shave milliseconds off, because it forces those awkward conversations. And that's the real impact, really valuable.
And as an SEO, how do you actually determine which skeleton to attack first?
I mean, that's the challenge with all of SEO, right? Is you've got finite resources and priorities, and everybody's very busy doing their day job, none of which is about focusing on quality. Like, nobody owns quality. So you're coming in from the outside and saying, here's 38 things that nobody owns. Please, can I buy you beer and cupcakes to get you to do them? I think, as always, the answer is try and make a compelling business case. Try and get buy-in from as high up the organization as you can, because if you can get the CEO bought in and get them to put pressure downwards, that's far easier than you begging at the table to try and put pressure upwards. That is hard. But I think that's the case of all SEO. You are always going to be an outsider begging for crumbs of quality control and focus and improvements. And you're getting good at that, I think, is probably the most important skill for SEO.
And of course, if Google is quite good at accepting mediocrity, then up-and-coming search engines, maybe AI-driven search engines, can't handle JavaScript as well, can't handle bloat as well, and end up not featuring you in answers because of it.
Yeah, that's the bit that I think people should be really concerned about. I think so much of our model for SEO mentally assumes that I can throw 1 million pages on the internet and drive 1 million visits to every single one of them and maybe convert a few. And now suddenly you have these systems which are making qualitative assessments of your pages and your brands. And if they don't like what they don't see, you don't get the access to that audience, and you don't get the ability to drive millions of people to them. So I think you get one shot to prove that your content is relevant and meaningful and good and performant. And if they struggle to pass that HTML, if they can't find the content on the page because it's hidden behind 20 megabytes of JavaScript, or if they can't understand it when they do get it because it's buried in 1 trillion lines of inline CSS or broken divs and HTML structure, you miss out on the opportunity to get in front of that audience. I think hopefully these systems get better at parsing and understanding the kind of web that we've built, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. So I think people doing the real kind of critical evaluation of when you turn off JavaScript and when you look at the HTML source code and you assume that you're a machine trying to pick out the gems of value, how easy is that? How clean is that? How straightforward is that? And if it's like wading through soup, it's going to be the same experience that ChatGPT and other systems have. I think, yeah, now is the time to be assessing that.
I guess it depends on the type of soup that you're talking about, but I get the picture. In terms of maybe where it fits into an overall SEO strategy. So if you've just started as a head of SEO in an organization, you're wanting to make an impact, you can get bogged down a little bit by this. And obviously it can take a while to actually get developers to make changes and actually measure the impacts of the changes that have been made. So should this be maybe within the first month, the first 3 months of you starting within a new role? And if so, how much time should you spend on doing this in relation to other activities to demonstrate the impact that you're having?
I love that you've stumbled into the trap, which is you're saying it takes so much time for developers to prioritize this and do this and to see results. That's because the thing is already bad. That shouldn't be normal. It should be trivially easy to make changes. Things like, I don't know, XML sitemaps, canonical URLs, hreflang, alt tags on images, all of these things should take minutes, not months. And the fact that we've normalized that they take months and months is because of these broken technical cultures, because we preference developer experience, because people are comfortable in their jobs. And if there are 12 developers when there might only need to be 3, it's in none of their interests to be more efficient. So I think getting good at understanding what good website development looks like and how those processes work, and what is involved in changing that H2 to an H3 or excluding thing from the XML sitemap if it's a Tuesday, understanding how those kinds of logical structures and systems work in the web gives you a lot of leverage to have grown-up conversations with developers and say this shouldn't take months. And then, in your role in day one at the new organization, you can say, it is a problem that our site takes 6 seconds to load. Here are the bottlenecks. Why can't we fix that this afternoon?
Jono, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
What's the key takeaway? Make your websites better and don't accept that them being broken and janky is okay.
Jono Alderson is an independent technical SEO consultant. Find out more over at jonoalderson.com. Jono, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Woo! Thanks for having me.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at SEOin2026.com.